The skull in the foreground is a genuine human skull while the rest are scaled down models. The real skull is no more than a foot away from the miniature ones, all thanks to forced perspective photography. Writer, director and series creator James Cameron sold the rights to the Terminator to Gale Anne Hurd for a mere $1 on the grounds that he could direct the movie if it was to ever get funded. Just before shooting was about to begin, producer Dino De Laurentiis required Arnold Schwarzenegger for the movie Conan the Destroyer. Rather than continue with the shoot and recast the role of the Terminator, it was decided that production would be postponed for 9 months so Arnold could star in the movie. With nothing to do during these 9 months, James Cameron took on another job, and that job was to write the sequel to the 1979 hit movie Alien. Also, during this 9-month postponement, James Cameron helped polish the script for Rambo First Blood Part 2. The 9-month wait for filming to start was also a blessing in disguise. The movie was originally intended to be shot in Canada, but when cameras were ready to roll, it was decided that the city of Los Angeles should be portrayed by the city of Los Angeles. It has been said that the scene where the Terminator arrives from the future had to be reshot. All drafts of the screenplay had the Terminator arrive at a schoolyard, and it was originally shot as such. James Cameron was unhappy with how some scenes turned out and later on had them reshot. He had to pay for the reshoots out of his own pocket as the studio refused to give him more money. Remember those 3 punks at the beginning of the movie? One of them is played by Bill Paxton, who would go on to work with James Cameron repeatedly in the future. Also, when the Terminator approaches the 3 punks, you can see Arnold Schwarzenegger's junk flopping around the place. You're welcome. Originally, James Cameron had envisioned 2 Terminators for the movie. One would be the cyborg, while the other would have been a shape changer made of liquid metal. The shape changer would have been impossible to pull off with the special effects available to him in the early 1980s, so the idea was dropped and would be later revisited for the sequel. The Terminator was released on October 26th in 1984, and although the movie itself states that it takes place in Los Angeles in 1984, the date given to Reese by the police officer of
12th May, Thursday,
would actually make this movie's events take place in 1983. Also, this police officer's voice is completely different in the trailer.
What day is it? The date! 12th May, Thursday.
what year?
Orion Pictures, the studio that had distributed and helped fund the movie, had 2 demands. The first was to give Reese a cyborg dog that travelled back in time with him, while the other was to strengthen the relationship between Sarah and Reese. James Cameron refused the first idea, but he agreed to the second one. In the original treatment to the movie, a second resistance soldier was sent back in time along with Reese to protect Sarah. The second soldier's name was Sumner, and he would have gotten very little screen time, as when he arrived from the future, he materialised into a fire escape. The gun store that the Terminator visits and the house number of the first Sarah Connor that the Terminator kills are both nearly identical. The gun store is 14329, while the first Sarah Connor's house is 14239. There are plenty of deleted scenes from the movie, but there is only one of the Terminator if you don't include the reshoot of the Terminator's arrival. After gunning down the wrong Sarah Connor, the Terminator calmly leaves the scene and walks back to his car. Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally up for the role of Reese, and James Cameron couldn't see Arnold playing the role. Various reports suggest that either Arnold or Cameron came up with the idea for Schwarzenegger to play the cyborg. The film's teaser trailer was narrated by Peter Cullen.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is Terminator, an assassin from the 21st century, sent back through time.
Best known as the voice of Optimus Prime in numerous Transformers projects. In an early draft of the movie, the Terminator would need to sustain its organic flesh by needing to eat periodically. A scene in an early draft of the movie would have had the Terminator eating a candy bar, wrapper and all. It's been said that up to 40 women auditioned for the role of Sarah Connor. Michael Biehn nearly lost the role of Kyle Reese when he went to audition for it. While auditioning for Reese, Michael Biehn had just come from an audition for Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, where he auditioned with a southern accent. When he went to the Terminator audition, he couldn't shake the southern accent and it nearly cost him the role. James Cameron, or at least his voice, has 2 uncredited cameos in the movie. The first being the guy who leaves a message on Sarah's answering machine having to cancel their date, and the second being the receptionist at the Tiki Motel near the end of the movie. Lance Henriksen plays the role of Detective Hal Voklovich. Although originally James Cameron had intended Lance to play the main role of the Terminator and even painted up a piece of concept artwork of Henriksen as the Terminator, the original idea being that the Terminator could look like an average man and blend into a crowd. The original idea is kind of lost when a 6'2" tall bodybuilder with an Austrian accent plays the role, but what the hell. In James Cameron's original sketch work, the turrets of the Hunter-Killer tanks had 2 barrels, but when it came to the finished model there was only 1 barrel. The Hunter-Killer tanks would get their dual barrel turrets for the sequel. Also during the second Future War sequence, Reese takes out a grenade and throws it under the treads of the Hunter-Killer tank. It took around 26 takes to get the grenade to land in the right spot. Also during this sequence, Reese is accompanied by a female soldier who never speaks. In Terminator Salvation, Reese is accompanied by a young girl who never speaks and is named Star. Some believe these two could be the same character, while I personally like to believe that Terminator Salvation doesn't exist. A scene cut from the movie that has never been included in any DVD or Blu-ray release has Sarah going to the restroom at the restaurant she is at and splashing her face with water after hearing of the murder of the second Sarah Connor. The Technor Club was actually a restaurant in downtown LA. Pay attention to the background here. When the Terminator enters the Technor Club and crushes this guy's hand, you can see 2 women sneak in. Those cheeky bitches. Reese really likes to leave things until the last second. If you go frame by frame at the beginning of the Tech Noir shootout, when Reese fires his first shot at the Terminator and hits it, the Terminator fires its handgun, just missing Sarah Connor. Also, obvious stunt Sarah is obvious. Arnold Schwarzenegger trained with firearms for an entire month, learning how to strip and reassemble them blindfolded and also how to reload them without having to look or blinking when firing them. It's just a shame that he didn't learn not to pull a silly face here and there when firing them though. This shot here is the only time when Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael Biehn appear together in the same frame. By the time Reese and the Terminator appear on screen together again, Arnold has been replaced with special effects. Filmed on a budget of just under $6.5 million, the movie went on to gross around $78 million worldwide. Not bad for a movie that Orion Pictures barely advertised. After Reese blows up this car and the Terminator runs through the fire, it appears that the Terminator got itself a haircut because it's shorter than it was mere moments ago. You can chalk that one up to the fire burning its hair off and also burning its eyebrows off. Although James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd are credited as the only writers of the movie, William Wisher Jr. actually provided additional dialogue to the script. Wisher also appears as Officer 1L19, the police officer that the Terminator knocks out and then steals his squad car so it can continue to chase Sarah and Reese. When Reese explains the Terminator to Sarah, he tells her that it is a Cyberdyne Systems Model 101. The Terminator itself is actually a T-800 endoskeleton, while the Model 101 is the flesh model, meaning that all 101 models look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Reese also tells Sarah about the T-600 series having rubber skin that the Resistance was able to spot easily. It took almost 25 years for the first T-600 series Terminator to be seen on screen in an episode of the TV series Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles. Then a completely different take of the T-600 appeared in Terminator Salvation. Not mentioned in the movie, but in the novel adaptation, is the T-700. In the Tech Noir shootout sequence, Reese blasts the Terminator to the floor, hoping it to be a T-700 and not the newer, tougher T-800 design. When the Terminator gets back up, he does indeed realise that it is a T-800. While it wasn't expanded upon further in the novel, it is believed that the T-700 series was the first to successfully graft flesh onto the endoskeleton, but the endoskeletons were not as endurable as their successor model. The T-700 would finally have its on-screen debut in Terminator Salvation, but was mistakenly referred to as a T-800. Michael Bihn's character Reese gets bitten on the hand by Sarah Connor. Biehn would go on to play 2 more characters in future James Cameron films, where his character gets bitten on the hand. When Reese is driving to escape from the Terminator in the underground car park, you can clearly see that it's the stuntman who is driving and not Michael Biehn. It's well known that the makeup effects as well as the endoskeleton were created by Stan Winston and his team. However, Winston wasn't the original choice. The studio told James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd that they needed makeup effects artist Dick Smith in order for the movie to be green-lit. Dick Smith met with Cameron and Hurd, read the script, and told them that he wasn't the right guy for this movie and instead suggested Stan Winston to them. Sometimes spin-off material tends to get the future dates wrong, an example being the Sarah Connor Chronicles playing all future war sequences happening in 2027 instead of 2029. This is probably due to the scene where Dr. Silberman is interviewing Reese. Reese mentions that he was fighting
with the 132nd under Perry From 21 to 27.
To which Silberman replies, that's the year 2027. Reese then continues, and although Volkovich talks over Reese, if you listen closely you can hear him say that he was assigned under John Connor for the last 2 years, thus proving that the movie is correct with its future war sequences being set in 2029. Reese also claims that the human resistance successfully beat Skynet in the future, hence why Skynet sends the Terminator back in time to kill Sarah Connor as the last resort to win. Skynet sure is a sore loser. Paul Winfield, who plays Lieutenant Ed Trackler, makes a boo-boo here. When Hal is talking to him about the guy Silberman brought in last week, he says to Hal, "Ed, shut up." So, is he telling himself to shut up? The final future war sequence opens with Reese looking through the scope of his rifle. It was originally intended to show parts of the Skynet complex through the scope before pulling back to reveal the whole complex with flying hunter killers patrolling and sentry gun towers. There is a photo of unknown origin showing Reese in TechCom soldier gear surrounded by other soldiers. It's probable that this could have been an extended sequence to the last future war flashback, an earlier scene, possibly a reshoot, or maybe it's just a behind the scene photo of the actors waiting in between the shooting of scenes. When most people think of the Terminator, they always think of it looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, when in fact the movie has 2 different models. During the final future war sequence, a Terminator infiltrates the human resistance hideout and is portrayed by Franco Columbo. Of the future war scenes, only 3 were filmed. It's been said that the studio executives threatened to shut down the entire production if James Cameron filmed any more beyond the ones that were scripted. In a scene cut from the movie, set before Reese and Sarah arrive at the Tiki Motel, Sarah is on the phone to her mum, telling her to get to the cabin. When finishing the phone call, Sarah takes out a phone book and finds the address for Cyberdyne Systems. She suggests to Reese that they go and destroy the place, but he refuses, saying that it's not his mission. Sarah then runs away and Reese gives chase, where the two of them end up near a small stream. Reese, looking at his surroundings, breaks down in tears as he's never seen anything like this in the post-apocalyptic world that he is from and was never meant to see. Sarah then uses the message Reese gave to her from John, saying, "There is no fate but what we make for ourselves," to convince him to go along with the plan to destroy Cyberdyne. Since the whole subplot of destroying Cyberdyne was cut from the movie, James Cameron decided to revisit it for the sequel. The scene of the Terminator leaving the hotel room after scanning Sarah's address book for useful information was cropped for the DVD release. Why? Because when you see the Terminator walking down the hallway, he's wearing sneakers instead of the black boots. You see that German Shepherd outside the Tiki Motel? That's James Cameron's own dog, Wolfie. Have you ever wondered where Reese got the handgun that he gives to Sarah at the motel? In a deleted scene during a police station shootout, while Reese and Sarah are trying to escape, they come across Lieutenant Trackler. Trackler, now realizing that Reese was telling the truth, gives him a handgun and tells him,
"She's got to stay alive, so you do whatever you have to do."
Reese only smiles one time during the whole movie, and that's when Sarah jokingly pretends to throw the bag of explosives at him, because explosives to the face are hilarious. Remember at the beginning of the movie when the Terminator runs over a toy truck? Well, the Terminator gets run over by a truck which is the exact same model and make that the toy was based off of. During the tanker chase sequence, shots of the Terminator switch between Arnold Schwarzenegger in makeup and an animatronic puppet. Can you tell which is which? Most people believe that a real tanker truck was destroyed for the explosion when it was in fact a model. If you look closely, you can see the wire that pulls it along. James Cameron did actually want to destroy a real tanker truck, but was not allowed as they were filming opposite a police armory in downtown LA. The tanker truck explosion needed to be done twice. As the crew got ready to film the first take, the wire that was attached to the front axle was pulled so hard that it ripped the front wheels from under the cab, and the explosives were set off before anybody could say anything. Due to the small budget of the movie, the studio originally wanted the movie to end with the explosion of the tanker, leaving Reese alive and the movie with a happy ending. However, James Cameron felt that this left the movie feeling anticlimactic and pushed to get the real scripted ending filmed. The Terminator endoskeleton at the end of the movie is achieved by a mixture of stop-motion animation, full-scale puppets, and animatronics. When the Terminator corners Sarah and Reese at the stairs, you can hear the humming sound usually heard when we see the Terminator's point of view. Except the movie doesn't establish it like the point of view seen earlier in the movie. Did somebody forget to add the visual effects for this shot? Or were the sound mixers in error? When the Terminator strikes Reese, you can clearly see that it's Michael Biehn's stunt double. So, in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Cyberdyne uses the CPU in the arm of the Terminator from the first movie as the basis for creating Skynet, right? I wonder whatever became of this leg then? And finally, remember that deleted subplot where Sarah finds the address to Cyberdyne Systems and tries to convince Reese that they need to take the future into their own hands and blow the place up? Well, another cutscene shows that the factory in which the finale takes place in was Cyberdyne Systems.
Just old junk and dildos.